All right, hello everyone and welcome to today's webinar titled The Future of IBM Maximo, How Work Centers and Inspections Can Transform Your Business. Our speaker today is Gary Taylor, an IBM certified instructor, product expert, and consultant. Gary is an IBM master instructor for tech data and a widely recognized expert on IoT. He began working with Maximo in 2008 and actively delivers training and consulting for Fortune 500 companies across various industries, including manufacturing, healthcare, energy, and financial services. Gary has worked as a consultant in the asset management arena for more than 20 years in a variety of roles, including development and administration. He has more than 12 years of experience as a Maximo consultant across all phases of deployment. Quite the resume, Gary. Now, before we get started with the webinar, I want to talk about the functionalities of this virtual platform. So during the webinar, everyone's mics will be muted. So if you have any questions, please enter them in the Q&A box near the bottom of your screen. We'll have a dedicated Q&A session at the end of the presentation. The webinar will be recorded, and I'm going to send a copy out to everyone near the end of the week. Stick around till the end of the session where I will share a promo code that can save you 10% off your Maximo training with Exit Certified. All right, now let's go ahead and get started. You can take it away, Gary.
Great, thanks so much, Michelle. Appreciate that. Welcome, everyone. We're so happy to have you here today. We're going to make the best use of your time that we can. We have, a really exciting agenda. We're going to be talking about Maximo, both within the context of the product itself, but also some of the options that we have for helping organizations just like yours with the delivery of courses that can enable your team. So before we get started, let's have a brief sort of discussion about what Maximo is. I imagine that most people here have a sense of how the product fits in their particular organization. One of the exciting things about Maximo, though, is that it is really one of the central hubs of IBM's Watson strategy. And so IBM has been working very aggressively over the last several years with various enhancements. Some we're going to talk about today in some detail. Others we're just going to discuss at a very high level. But when we talk about the idea of assets, it really doesn't make any difference if you're a hospital or an auto manufacturer, or if you are a government institution. Obviously, dealing with the acquisition, maintenance, and eventually the retirement of assets is one of the responsibilities that every organization will have to deal with. And how well that is done will impact not only the financial well-being of your organization, but also will have an impact in many cases with safety and other concerns related to your employees and your customers. So when we talk about these physical assets, it could be that you're talking about airplanes. It could be that we are dealing with things as simple as an air conditioning unit that happens to be in a window somewhere in a warehouse. Maximo is designed to be able to really address all of those concerns. And as we sort of look at this from our perspective, one of the things that's exciting about Maximo is it decreases what I call the fog of war that happens with asset management. When we think about this, when you have assets that are deployed at the enterprise level, the decision makers often have really no idea how well maintained the asset infrastructure is. There is a great deal of uncertainty. Very frequently there will be vendor relationships and other relationships that will factor in there. So being able to collect and analyze that data is going to be crucial for us. Increasing operational efficiency. When we say that we want to be more efficient, how well we manage our assets will obviously allow us to essentially redirect efforts. A large enterprise, even a smaller enterprise, is very much like a ship, and it's difficult to sort of manage that, to turn and redirect the organization's efforts in a particular area. So we're going to see that Maximo is going to make it, when properly implemented, much easier to address those concerns. Being able to extend the life cycle. Maintenance is really everything. The airline industry is one of my favorite examples. where you have airplanes that are flying today that have been in the air for decades, literally for 50 years, especially in the private space. Those planes have been maintained. They're inspected on a regular basis. Parts have been replaced, but it's still exactly the same airplane in many ways that came off the assembly line 50 years ago. So being able to extend the life cycle of your assets, being able to maximize those investments is a very important concern for us there. And again, many customers that are represented here will be global enterprises. As we consider some of the concerns that you're going to have, you may be, especially with the pandemic and other concerns, unable to visit some of your locations. Maximo can tie all that data together and give you insight as to what's happening in those various areas. Maximo as a company has been around for, as a product rather, has been around for decades. The original company that created Maximo, that was acquired by IBM, really created the central functionality that we have today. One of the exciting things that's happened, as I said before, is that IBM has incorporated Maximo into their Watson family. So that means when we start talking about the idea of sensors and other things that are connected, really allow us to understand what's happening with those assets, and importantly, to be able to extract data, to be able to have advanced analytics, not only directly within the Maximo product, but also leveraging IBM's Cognos portfolio. We start talking about AI, being able to understand what's happening in the field, being able to have advanced predictive analytics, and being able to manage that is an important concern for many organizations as well. Something also crucial is the idea of being able to stand up Maximo. If you're a small organization right now, you may be in a situation where, as a large enterprise or as a smaller organization, you have a new facility that needs to be stood up, and you may have some concerns, legal or others, about providing software internationally or even in a remote facility. IBM has SaaS solutions that will allow us to take advantage of that really quite nicely. And as we sort of look at that, that's going to be a major factor for us in terms of providing a value proposition there. And then very importantly, as we're going to see as we get further into our presentation, mobility is a huge concern as well. Typical Maximo customers will have lots of workers that will be working from desktops or laptops. But when you start talking about assets that are in the field, if you're in energy, even if you're in a warehouse, being able to have a mobile device or a cell phone or a tablet, being able to leverage that device is really something that IBM has invested a lot in on your behalf. Obviously, your pain points. For some of you, if you're in manufacturing, you have inventory issues that are a daily concern, both in terms of the manufacturing infrastructure, but also in terms of maintaining that infrastructure. If you're a facility that's being managed in the healthcare space, if you are a pharmaceutical firm, or if you're a government institution, you have concerns there as well. Everyone has budgetary issues, and so being able to do the most that we can, being able to exploit the inventory that you have without carrying excess inventory, being able to account for safety concerns and regulations in this rapidly changing world, Maximo can really facilitate that for you, being able to reduce the number of people who have to come in to a particular space by improving the efficiency with things like work plans that we'll discuss a little bit later on. So lots of different issues are in place here in terms of our ability to kind of manage this. So lots of benefits. One of them is unplanned downtime. I started my career in manufacturing, where we were told from the very beginning exactly how much it would cost to have the assembly line go down. And one of our jobs was to make sure that never happened. But it doesn't make any difference if you're in manufacturing or if you're in some other industry. Being able to eliminate downtime makes life easier for everyone. Being able to minimize the failures. Often a failure will really involve new costs that, if maintenance had been properly engaged over the life of the asset, you would have far fewer costs if maintenance had actually been done properly. Being able to maximize the use of assets, improving reliability, being able to reduce inventory costs. improving your budgeting process. There's some really great functionalities that are available with Maximo that we will discuss briefly here and that are covered in our courses that help in that area of purchasing and budgeting. Being able to deal with risk management, regulatory compliance. I mean, if you're, we have a lot of customers that are in the pharmaceutical space or in life sciences that have burdens not only domestically but also internationally. If you're manufacturing something in one country that will be used in another, you are subject to more than one country's laws. Maximo can make it easy for you to accommodate all of those requirements. And again, extending the life of the asset rather. And then finally, of course, providing one version of the truth. That's something that's so crucial. Maximo can do that on its own. Some customers essentially implement Maximo, and it is, in fact, the only product that they have that deals with asset management. Many others, though, will leverage capabilities that IBM has to connect Maximo with other products like SAP and Oracle there. So lots of challenges here that are addressed directly by Maximo. When we look at the idea of getting a return on investment, Maximo's popularity in the marketplace really can be tied to that return on investment that happens on so many different fronts, from labor utilization, being able to reduce overtime, being able to understand what those costs are, asset utilization, sort of looking at the areas that we would be able to deal with those assets, overhaul time. These are examples of things that IBM can tout as true customer stories, where the railroad was able to save $5 million by tracking things like overtime better and being able to minimize that. Warranties. One of the exciting things about Maximo is that it has the ability, if you are working with it, to tie warranties directly to the asset. So from the instant you have a reported failure, the person that is made aware of that failure knows that the asset is under warranty and can immediately contact the vendor to deal with it. So that's really very exciting. You don't have those situations where there's some confusion about that. Plant downtime, inventory needs. These are all the things, depending on where you are, you have a sense of these in your organization. And as we discuss them at a very high level, I think the argument for where, how Maximo works and how it fits in is going to be very important for us ultimately. So we're going to first have sort of a presentation portion of this, and then we're going to go and access a live Maximo environment. I'm going to show you some of this live, and then we're going to open up the floor to questions, and you'll be able to at your own sort of time there, you can sort of ask us questions. You can, if you have a question right now, you can put it in the chat window, and my colleague Michelle and I will be observing that. And at the end, we'll have a time for questions as well that you'll be able to give us also there. So if you have those, please share those with us as well. And so we'll be able to manage those for you there. So we're first going to talk about work centers. Maximo, as I mentioned before, has been around for a very long time. It's actually, as a product, it's been around for decades. IBM started several versions ago an initiative to sort of rethink the user interface. There are lots of users who've been in Maximo for many years that do not necessarily want a UI, a new UI. IBM has kind of addressed those sort of those concerns by giving us a new capability called Work Centers that works coherently with the older traditional user interface for Maximo. So Work Centers are essentially the new UI for Maximo. So if you, depending upon where you work, this may not be something that you're using at all if you have Maximo in-house. Some customers have not really worked with them at all. One of the things that's really exciting about the Work Centers is the role specific. So IBM, in rethinking the UI, recognized that in the traditional Maximo UI with the dozens of modules and the hundreds of applications, that there was a learning curve where people had to understand how to skip between different applications in order to complete a particular process. What we have now are completely new user interfaces that are driven towards specific roles that essentially expose everything that's required to sort of manage what your responsibilities are. One of the most important work centers is what's called work supervision. And we'll show you this live in a few minutes, but the basic premise behind work supervision is that it exposes for us here, really quite nicely, a role-based user interface that allows us to manage the full life cycle of work that would happen with assets, from approving the initial work that needs to be done, to assigning the owner for the work, allowing the owner to understand, hey, this is your new assignment, to monitoring the work, and then finally closing the work. And what's exciting about this, in contrast to the original Maximo user interface, is that this can all be done from here. And so this means that someone who is using this device, using this on their desktop computer, will be able to do it. If you look at this UI, it's also very modern. It takes advantage of technical innovations like HTML5 and JavaScript, so it's a responsive UI. What that means is that if you're using this user interface on a desktop device or a laptop, it will look one way. In a few minutes, I'm going to show you how it looks on a mobile device, so you'll be able to understand that someone could easily leverage this from a cell phone, for example. And so it's really kind of it's a very exciting UI. So this is the responsibility area, the domain for someone who is in control of the actual work that needs to be done. And so we'll take a look at this live in a few minutes, but I'm going to show you, the big picture here initially. When we're working inside there, we'll be able to assign owners or groups, and I'll walk you through how that works. But what we're able to do is we're able to say, hey, this belongs to this particular person. We can monitor the work as well. And then we can also, understand after the fact how the work was executed. With that in mind, there's another work center for work execution. So if you think about someone who is a supervisor who has trades working on their team, the work supervision would be their work center. The actual trades, the mechanics, the electricians, the plumbers, whoever they might be, would be in the work execution area. So this is a place that someone in the field can easily complete their work. And this is exceptionally handy, again, for people that are accessing mobile devices. So I could have someone that has Maximo on a tablet, as some customers that I've worked with have frequently, or someone has it on their cell phone. They're going to be able to complete their work directly from this work execution work center, allowing them to gather that information. They'll be able to go into a specific work order and complete that work order there directly. And what's really kind of cool about this is that you are fully integrated. Starting with Maximo 7.6.09, the work centers, which had existed before, were integrated directly into Maximo. So instead of being a little island where you were able to do some things, but it didn't tie back into things like work plans and other things that might be happening. Now what we do in the work center is going to feed data and even drive operations in the standard Maximo UI. So people will be able to be equal participants if they're using work centers with other resources that might be available there. It's also possible for individuals to report their actuals. So if you're working in an environment like this, we have the idea of actuals in place where someone who is working with Maximo and in the field, we may have said, hey, this is going to take 2 hours, but there's some unforeseen hazard that may be in place, has to be removed, or it just takes longer than expected. They're going to be able to report the actual hours directly from the work center, again, potentially in a mobile device. And again, you'll be able to work with unplanned asset utilization, spare parts, whatever needs to be done. The actuals will allow us to update that. And again, the work supervisor will be able to, in the work supervision work center, be able to go in to complete that work there and close it out. And so we can see at a very high level what's going on. We'll take a look at not only this work center, but a few more in just a few minutes. And from there, we'll be able to understand very clearly exactly how easily someone can get essentially that 30,000-foot view of what's happening in the enterprise. And so depending upon what your responsibilities are, you'll be able to see everything that's happening much more easily. And so what's kind of cool about this is that the work center almost doubles as a reporting environment, because as you can see here, we have the ability to see not only the work that's actually in progress, we can see at the very top here what's overdue. Is there emergency work that's overdue? Is there overdue preventative maintenance? And so as you're starting to ask questions, instead of having to run reports separately, the Work Supervision Work Center is going to make it easy for us to understand what's happening. And this is a part of that, the analytics we were talking about that IBM has lent to the work centers to make it easier for you to get your job done. And the work execution area also provides that same kind of insight to help us understand, hey, what needs to be done, what's due today, what's due tomorrow, what's due in the next 3 days, and to be able to also act as a central hub for communication within the enterprise as well. Another very handy place for us in terms of the work center is the business analysis area. Business analysis is an area that allows us to deal with AI-related activities. So as we start to think about some of the concerns here, we're going to be able to leverage AI in the current releases, but it's really business analytics in the sense of having reports that let us understand what's happening here as well initially. So even if you're not terribly involved with all of the innovations that have come along with the advanced sensors from the IoT improvements that IBM has made within Maximo, being able to see very clearly, hey, what's happening here? When we have looking at emergency maintenance, what's going on here? Are we seeing trends that are concerning for us? For example, how many work orders are overdue? How many are waiting on approval? And this is actually color-coded view. You can see here. Some of them, they'll be green, yellow, and red. And so as we look at this, we'll have a sense of what's happening. And as in a few minutes, we'll go in here. You can actually hover here in the Work Analysis Work Center, and you'll be able to see, very clearly what's happening with the work at that point. It's also possible to create service requests. So if you have a service request, we can create those. And those are available as well. And depending upon which release of Maximo you're on, you can actually create service requests directly from the Work Center. And so this is really kind of a cool thing that we can actually go in and look at those service requests and understand what's happening here with them. So very good stuff there. One of the other really nice things that IBM has added are inspection forms. We'll walk through those as well. Inspection forms are fantastic. In the release that we're working with here and all the current releases, inspection forms are, again, tied back to assets. I'll show you some examples of those in a moment, but the basic idea is that you're going to be able to take things that were originally paper processes or indirect processes and link them directly into Maximo. So you'll be able to create your own form. There are some examples that are available. Essentially, it's a very simple form builder that virtually any employee could be trained to use. Using that form builder, we will specify certain requirements for the inspection. It can involve things like meters and other things that the assets may have. And with those in mind, you'll go in and create your questions. I'll walk through that with you in a few minutes, so don't worry about the details now, but we can create single answer questions. We can have numeric answers. We can have situations where there's a meter value that has to be added. In a larger organization, we will create libraries of inspection forms. Some of them will be generic. Some can be very, very specific. If you're in a nuclear operation, you may have some very specific forms related to assets that are peculiar to your industry. It may be that you have a vehicle form, which is what we're going to be using here in a few minutes. And that vehicle form would allow you to understand what's the current state of your fleet there. It's also possible to make changes with those. We'll show you in a few minutes. And there's a special work center called the Conduct Inspection Work Center that will make it possible for us to complete those. So work centers are really the future of what Maximo is. For some customers that are using specific Maximo offerings, it's the only user interface. So depending upon where you are, you may be in a situation where you're using the traditional Maximo user interface, but you have concerns around mobility. Not so many years ago, if you were using Maximo and you wanted great mobile access, you had to do software development. You had to actually use a toolkit that IBM had to build apps, and that IBM recognized that was a bit cumbersome. And so what they've done is they've added that very similar functionality to the main Maximo product, by providing you with these work centers, which will allow you to complete your work as you need to within the scope that's required using the resources that are at hand. If you have laptops or desktops, you can do it that way. If it's a tablet that's connected wirelessly, you can work that way, and cell phones as well. And with the inspections, whoever is in charge with the inspections be able to see what's pending. It could be that you're talking about someone who is working maintenance in a facility. It could be that you're involved in energy and you have towers that need to be inspected, or telecoms. You have to inspect your towers, be able to see which inspections were pending, which ones were in progress. And if you go and look at those, you'd be able to see how that was happening. An inspection may take a substantial amount of time. You're talking about something like a bridge inspection that we might have. That's something that may take really several days, depending upon how large the bridge is. Other things like a ladder inspection could be done in a few minutes. So depending upon what's happening there, you'd be able to understand how that would be used. It's also possible to create inspections. We can do that directly based on the schedule. We can set them up, and we can also have them happen on demand as well. Okay, I'm going to show you that in just a second here. And when we're done, we'll complete the inspection. The form that has been created will be made available to the person who's been assigned the work. They will fill in that form, and then from there, we'll be able to have that completed inspection and to share that information with the individuals who are using the actual product there. And so we'll really be able to do this in terms of being able to kind of manage this here. And that'll be great for us as we kind of understand the mechanics for that. So lots of good stuff there, and we'll get into this in some detail. And we'll be able to see which inspections have been completed as well, which is going to be really very exciting there. So lots of good stuff there. Let me go ahead and share with you sort of a live demo, and then we'll have a few moments for some questions. So while we're doing that, we have some questions that we want to get a sense of with you all. So I know most of you are probably using Maximo currently. If you could share with us, we have a little poll that we're going to share. If you could actually let us know where you are in terms of the version of Maximo that you're on. So we essentially have, are you on 7.5 or earlier? Are you on 7.6? Or are you one of those super early adopters who has sort of rethought your licensing and moved up to Maximo 8? So if you could go ahead and give us a response with that. And while we're doing that, I will share our live environment, and I'll be right back there with you. Okay, great. Okay, so we've gotten a bunch of answers in there. Anyone, let's see. Okay, let's give you a few more seconds to finish that up. Okay, excellent. This is what we would expect. I'll go ahead and share these results with you all. The vast majority of you all are currently on Maximo 7.6 version. And obviously there are several releases in there, but we would expect that. A few people are on 7.5. I think you're going to be really excited if you're moving from 7.5 up to the current releases. And as expected, a fair number of customers are not using Maximo 8, and we have some of you that are apparently new to Maximo, which is exciting. I think as we sort of get into this, this is going to be a very brief introduction to the way this works, but we'll get a sense of this as we get further in here in just a moment there. We did have a couple of questions, and I think we can answer a couple of those right now before we move into this demonstration here. We had a question about the tiles being large. So, the nature of this, of the work centers is they're not only role specific, they're also task specific. So generally speaking, it really depends upon what your responsibilities are. We would not expect, for example, for a typical trade to have hundreds of active work orders that they would have available there. So they would generally only see the workers that were available for them to work on. And so the way the tiles are set up, you're not going to have that many really being displayed. It's also a responsive UI, as we'll see in a few minutes, and so there's some advantages there for that as well. So we'll talk about that there. And we did have a question as well about the background that's required to attend our training courses. We'll talk more about our courses at the very end of the session, but we have two offerings. One is intended for people that are sort of brand new to Maximo, and then we have another offering that's intended for people that are sort of in charge of a Maximo deployment. And so we'll get into that detail there as well. Okay, very good. Let me go ahead and share our live environment here. So give me just a second, and we will be in there. So what I'm going to be sharing with you here is essentially an environment that has work centers enabled. I've just logged in as the Max admin, so the administrator of the Maximo environment. And as I've gone in here, it's going to ask me what I want to do. And one of the things it's going to show me first are the work centers. And so as we get in here, we're going to get a sense of what's happening with these. We'll take a look at these work centers here in a second. There's some other tools that are available, and we can also go to the start centers. For those of you that are new to Maximo and the traditional UI for Maximo, there's this thing called the start center. I'm going to show you that very quickly so you have a sense of what's happening here. This is the traditional UI, and I mentioned before that there are lots of applications, lots of modules and applications in here. The traditional workflow for a Maximo user is they have to be trained to understand which application to open at a particular stage of maintenance. So, and that takes some time. I mean, people that are very, very good at their trade or very, very good administratively sometimes struggle to learn how an application works. It can take months, frankly, for some people to fully understand that. That's what's exciting about the work centers that we were talking about there a moment ago. So work centers are really, a newer view of this, and so we're going to take a look at that, and we'll understand, really very directly how that's going to be available for us in terms of tooling there. So, but that's sort of the big picture for that in terms of the actual setup. Let me just go very good here. Sorry, it logged me out there. Sorry about that. Okay, so this is a view here of that standard UI. So there are a bunch of things that we can do in terms of being able to access different resources. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go straight into one of our work centers, which is the actual inspection area. So when I open this up, this is going to take me to a work center. This is the inspection work center, and it's a really exciting location. And this work center is going to be very helpful for us because one of the things it's going to do is let us see what's available. We'll be able to understand very directly which types of inspections are available. I'm going to open one of these up. This is actually the bridge inspection report. And so when I go look at this form, I can see who originally created it, and I can create a revision. I just want to show you how easily a form can be modified. So this is an inspection form that was created for a bridge, and as expected, it's going to be a fairly sort of complex environment, and there could be a lot of different areas. This is actually sections, so that there are different areas here. So if you look at the way this form has actually been created, there are different sections. There's a general area for the bridge. The number 2 is stream conditions, and then masonry, and then beam trusses, and then bracing. So this is sort of a general view of this. And if I were to go in, I could go and look at this. I can add a question if I want to. And so if I add a question, it will allow me to enter some information. And I'll say for this to be a masonry related question, I'd say asphalt quality, asphalt condition. And sort of looking at the condition of that. It will ask me questions about what I'm going to use. This would be something that might be, it could use a meter, for example. I could have it be with a file upload. I could add both of those here. File uploads are great because I could actually have an attachment. I can take a picture with my phone, and using my phone's camera, I can really view directly what the condition of that bridge is. And then from there, we would be able to essentially take a step back and not have to describe it with words, and simply preserve a record of that condition, good, bad, or ugly. And so we'd be able to do that with the mobile device and share that information there as well. I can make my value something that's a numeric entry, and I could also make it a single choice entry. I'm going to get rid of the numeric, and I'm also going to get rid of the file upload. I'm going to make it a single choice. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to, is the condition acceptable? And so, sorry, I got the I there. So is the condition acceptable? And then there are going to be two options. I can enter an option there. If I want, I would say yes. And then my next option I could enter would be no. And then I could also say NA for not applicable. And so I can make this a required question. And then from there, I can click done. And so that question will be added to the actual form. And then my choice about this is that I can, if I want to, I can actually make this, this actual question in terms of where I want to do with it. I can actually move it up, and I can drag this and drop it wherever it is I would like to put it there in terms of being able to do this. And so it would actually drop into that area up there, and I'd be able to make it available there. So this is one of the areas that we have. There are some other areas available as well. I'm going to go back to one of my other screens here real quick. So we want to make sure we make the best of your time there. I'm going to log in as Ed, and Ed is a work supervisor. And so Ed has access to the work supervision area that we saw a few minutes ago. And so again, this is a great UI in terms of the way that it's going to present here. You know, the screen is not as wide as it could be, but you know, what I can do is I can drag this out a little bit, and there's some scroll bars here. I'm going to show you how this would be responsive in a few minutes. I'm actually accessing this from an environment where the UI is not quite full screen. So in a regular environment, it'll be a little bit larger. But the way our lab, this is an actual lab environment. So this is the lab environment if you were able to take one of our courses that you'd be able to use. And when we give students the course, they have access to their own dedicated Maximo server for each student. But you see here, this is the full life cycle of work management. We have the approval of the initial work, the assignment of the owner, the monitoring of the work, and again, as we go over there, the actual closing of the work. I'm going to open up one of the existing work orders here that has not yet been approved. And so this is corrective maintenance. The little CM there lets me understand what it is at the very top there. And this is relocating the guardrails around a compressor. Now, this is a different UI. And what's exciting about it is from this one screen, I'm going to be able to see very, very easily everything that's required, but also be able to complete the steps. So for example, waiting an approval, I can actually go inside here and edit this, and I can change the status. Now, the way that Maximo works is that depending upon the current state of the work order, the acceptable states I can transition to would be listed here. If you want additional states, you have the ability to do that inside your organization. But for the moment, we're going to say that we want to go ahead and approve this work order so that people can get started. Work order priority is also something that's embedded here. And so with work orders, we're able to determine exactly what the priority is, so that higher priority work orders are initiated on their own there. It's going to give us the asset in question. So this is actually a particular compressor. I could search, and if I chose to, I could pick any other asset. So if I've changed my mind or if someone made a mistake, we can go and edit that. So early in the life cycle, before any work started, we can switch that around. The location of the assets also at something that we can edit. And again, if we want to change that location, we have the ability to do that as well. And we also have the work type. If there were a parent work order, sometimes you may have a work order that has multiple steps associated with it. So it may be that the work order requires an electrician, a plumber, and a mechanic to complete the work, and that there's a master work order, and then there's a child, and so the parent could be specified here. If there's an originating record, if the asset's up, that's the status we see there, and that's the actual site there as well. There's also a plan associated with this. The plan is something that is generated. One of the really cool things that you can do with these current releases of Maximo is that it's possible for us to link something like a work order, even an inspection, to the work center. So we can actually make that available as well. So I could actually go in here. There are different tasks that are here. We can see where these are. If there were materials that were associated with this, we would have those available if they needed to be. If we discover, if the trade's out there and they realize, hey, this can't be done without a particular material, I can, as a trade, I would be able to go in and add that. I can do that as a supervisor as well. And so I'd be able to go in and search for a particular item. If I wanted to, I can enter the item, and any of my items that were available will be listed over here on the right-hand side. You see there are hundreds of them that are available. I can change the quantity. I can determine what storeroom it comes from, something that's available there as well. And we also have the ability to make other changes there. And I could save this if I'd made changes. I didn't enter it all. If I click the X here, it simply cancels out. So it was actually deleted there. So definitely some really exciting stuff here in terms of what's available. If we had a lot more time, we'd be able to go into a lot more detail. We do want to take some time to answer some of your questions there. While we're setting that up, we have a couple of other surveys we want to share. So let me go ahead and share the first of those with you, and then we'll move forward to the rest of our Q&A. So again, thank everyone who answered the questions there earlier. One of the things we'd like to understand is what industries are represented here, and which resources you're using as an organization. These are what are called Maximo Industry Solutions. So some customers have simply bought the core version of Maximo. Others have bought the life sciences or transportation or aviation. If you could please, let's go ahead and share with us some info about what you're using. And so we'll be able to answer some of those questions for you there. And I did forget to share one thing with you, so I'm going to go back to my live environment, and once I get those answers, if you could share that with us. I did forget to share one other thing, so give me just a moment here. So someone did ask a question there about mobile devices, and I mentioned that I was going to share that with you before, so give me just a second and I will share that with you while you're still answering those questions. So again, one of the things that's exciting about this is that IBM has designed this using best practices. As you move from version to version, they've dramatically improved upon those. So what we'll do here is I'm just going to take advantage of a capability that's available inside of Chrome. We go to the details area over here, and I'm just going to go switch on under Tools. I'm going to go ahead and switch on the developer tools. And in doing so, I'm going to switch to a mobile device. By default, it switches to a responsive device. I'm going to go ahead and pull this down, and I'm going to go switch over to an iPhone 8 Plus. So this shows me generally what it would look like if I were in an iPhone 8 Plus. And there are some scroll bars there, obviously, depending upon where you are. I'm logged in as a supervisor, so there are a lot of different things that are available here. This UI is completely responsive in terms of our ability to kind of go in there and work with it. If I were to go and go to a tablet, essentially a tablet like an iPad Pro, would look essentially the same as a desktop device, and it will allow us to go through and scroll, and it's responsive. And then if I were on a tablet here, and be able to swipe and do everything else that you might have happening there. So very good. I hope that answered your question there. Okay, excellent. So we do have a couple of more questions available here. So it looks like, did everyone see the poll question? Let's see here. Okay, so very good. If you could please share information about what you're using in terms of the industry solutions. And then we'll, let's see, we have some other Q&A questions. So while that's happening, let's go ahead and answer some of those questions as well. Yeah, so we do have a question about the work centers being used in the mobile device. Absolutely. So you could actually be able to go in and use it. It is not a mobile app, and so that's actually an advantage that it has. It's a mobile interface for Maximo. Obviously, if you've taken the effort to build an app using IBM's mobile-first platform, you could continue to use that. But the advantage this has is that it's out of the box, and as IBM increments and improves Maximo, as they have new releases, you don't have to go back and retool your older app. So out of the box, when IBM has a new release, you're going to have an updated mobile experience, which I think is going to be a substantial capability there for you in terms of working with that. And again, there are we have a question about customization for work centers. There is some customization available. We can't get into the detail about that right now, but if you want us to, we could follow up with you there. So one asked the question about that, so we can definitely do that in terms of being able to take advantage of that. Someone did ask a question about what differentiates this course versus some of the other resources that are available, including some that IBM makes available. IBM is no longer updating any of the resources that they've made available, and so some of the materials that they have released are much older. And so first of all, this newer interface is not available. It's not really discussed, and it's not something that's a part of that. I think many of the courses they have are as far back as Maximo 7.6. .3, so that they go back pretty far. So our course is, we're continually innovating. The course is tailored to be hands-on. So one of the things that's very nice about it is that you are able, through with the help of either myself or one of my colleagues, you're able to work in your own unique Maximo environment, leveraging Courseware that's intended to guide you through the entire process from beginning to end, from the perspective of someone who has no experience with Maximo, to essentially leading you up to the expert level of skill if you go through both of the courses that we have. So they're hands-on, they are tailored, and importantly, they are being updated. And so they're really kind of in a league of their own in terms of what's available. And obviously, these are also the only authorized courseware. So while IBM does have some other resources that are available, these are the only courses that IBM has available and that IBM has authorized for Maximo for live delivery. So there's an extensive behind-the-scenes process that happens with IBM where we have to meet certain standards, and we meet and exceed those for sure. Let's see here. And so I think we have a couple more here. There's some other chat questions there. Okay, I think we do have, and Maximo Anywhere does have some similar capabilities. We can talk more about that offline if you're interested in that. And we do have a question about certificates. One of the things that really separates Exit Certified and Tech Data in the training marketplace is that we work with IBM and Acclaim to provide a very special badge that is issued through IBM's official certification program. And so when you successfully complete one of our courses, one of our instructor-led courses, the instructor evaluates your participation in the class, and you're able to receive a badge that you're able to attach to your LinkedIn profile. Maximo is a pretty hot area right now, as I'm sure you all know. And so we've had a lot of positive feedback from our attendees about the value of that there. Let's see, I think we have time for one more question before we turn this back over to my colleague, Michelle there. Okay, what do we have here? And Ravi, we didn't have enough time for more demo there. Let's see, where are we here? Yeah, and Michael will be giving you those questions in just a few minutes, without a doubt. Yeah, without a doubt. Those two courses, we'll get you those. Okay, so Michael's asking the question about our two courses. We have the course codes there, and in a moment, Michelle's going to share that with us here, so we'll be able to have that available. Any other questions real quick there? Okay, very good. Can we go ahead and, a moment here, Michelle, and I'll have that ready for you. And so thank you everyone for your time. I really appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedules to attend this webinar. I hope it was helpful to you. And again, we have lots of other resources that are available there that will hopefully allow you to really leverage the investment that your organization has made in Maximo. And one of the things that happens frequently is organizations will buy something, they'll implement it, but the actual implementation comes before the training. It's never too late to really take advantage of the proper training and to be able to get access to it. And there's nothing quite like having an opportunity not only to learn from a live instructor, but also to share with your colleagues that are in the class, many of whom will be from the same industries that you're a part of there. So thank you, Michelle. I'll let you go ahead and get started.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Gary. And again, thank you to everyone for taking some time to learn more about Maximo. As I mentioned at the beginning, we recorded today's session and we're going to send a copy out to everyone by the end of the week. I also spoke about a promo. So some details about that promo. We're offering 10% off your IBM Maximo instructor-led training from now through December 31st if you train with Exit Certified. I posted the promo code in the chat window for everyone. It's IBM webinar, and you'll get a copy of that with the recording as well. I've also linked to the two Maximo courses that we run, one being the Maximo Asset Management Fundamentals, and the other being Maximo Asset Management System Administration and Development. We are also guaranteed to run 3 of those classes for each course. So the first one being September 21st for the fundamentals and September 28th for the system administration and development. You can find all of those details and find a date that works with your schedule by visiting our website, exitcertified.com. And I linked both of those courses in the chat window for everyone.
Okay.
Gary, we do have a little bit of time. Maybe you can speak to the question of if there are any differences between the free Maximo courses IBM makes available compared to the ones that we at Exit Certified and you deliver.
Okay, that sounds great, Michelle. And just to expand on what we were talking about there before, IBM has, so Maximo's been around for decades. And so over the last 10 or 15 years, IBM has released recordings of earlier versions of Maximo. So one of the biggest differences is that our version is the one that incorporates the integrated work centers as well as the other updates that have happened with the product. And that's a very big deal. So if you've been working with Maximo for a really long time, but you want to understand how to use it better, it's best to be on a version that's more integrated with those capabilities. Obviously, you have the benefit of a live instructor. And as I mentioned before, you have an opportunity to learn from your colleagues there. One of the things that surprised me as an instructor is how people that are in completely different industries who are using Maximo can learn lessons. I recently had a course where someone was in the life sciences area and another person was in manufacturing, and they not only got along quite well, they both learned things from their colleagues there, along with other students that were in the course as well. So the advantage, again, of an updated course versus the older recordings that IBM has. They are out of date. IBM is no longer creating courses. They're relying on their strategic partners like exit certified to create those courses, and they have entrusted Maximo specifically with exit certified. It is a live instructor where you have your own dedicated environment where you have hands-on experience. So instead of watching a simple recording, you'll be able to actually execute the steps in an environment that you don't have to worry about breaking. It's ours. If you break it, we'll fix it by the end of the week. Don't worry about that. And then finally, you get a chance to interact with your colleagues as well. Okay, great. I think that's it for everyone, right? Any other questions? We have another minute or so.
It looks like we may have answered all the questions, Gary. I'll hang out in the room for a little bit, so if any questions do come in, we'll be here to respond. But once again, thank you so much to everyone. Do keep an eye out for an email from us where you will have your copy of this session along with some more information.
Okay, great. Thanks again, everyone. Really appreciate your time.